I thought success would make me happy, but it only made me feel more lost. I used to believe there was a finish line, not in a vague, motivational way. I mean a real one, a point in life where everything would finally make sense, where the pressure would disappear, where I would wake up and feel success wasn't optional. It wasn't something you explored, it was something you had to achieve, and not just any version of it, a very specific one, a respected career. Financial stability, a life that looked impressive from the outside, something people could point at and say, she made it. The same conversations over and over again, relatives asking the same questions. What will you become? Doctor? Engineer? Lawyer? They didn't ask if I was. I started building my identity around that, not who I was, but who I was supposed to become. I learned early how to perform, how to meet expectations, how to do what needed to be done, even when I didn't fully understand why. I was good at it too. Good grades. Discipline. Focus. I became the person everyone expected me to be, and that came with something dangerous. Validation. Approval. Pride from my parents, respect from others, and slowly that became addictive because it felt like proof that I was doing something right, proof that I was on the right path. So I kept going, without questioning it, without stopping, without asking myself if this was actually what I wanted, because, honestly, questioned, everything was already decided. The path was clear. Study hard, get into a good university, build a career, become successful. Simple, at least. That's how it looked, but no one talks about what that kind of life feels like from the inside, because from the outside, everything looks perfect. I did everything right. I got into a great program. I pushed through the long nights, the stress, the pressure, the constant need to prove myself, and eventually, I made it. At least, that's what everyone said. I remember. Dream about. My phone didn't stop ringing. Messages from family. Friends, congratulations everywhere. You did it. We're so proud of you. This is just the beginning. And I smiled. I said thank you. I played the role, but inside, I felt something I wasn't expecting. Nothing, no excitement, no overwhelming joy, no sense of arrival, just silence. And I told myself it was normal. Maybe it hadn't sunk in yet. Maybe I needed time, and maybe the feeling would come later. I moved forward. Started the job, settled into the routine, and for a while, I convinced myself everything was fine. Because, again, from the outside, it was. I had the job, the income, the lifestyle, everything I had been working toward. But slowly, something started to feel off. At first, it was small, easy to ignore, a feeling at the end of the day, a quiet question in the back of my mind. Is this it? But I pushed it away, because questioning it felt wrong after everything it took to get. So I worked harder, stayed later, tried to find meaning in the work, tried to convince myself this was what fulfillment looked like, but the feeling didn't go away. It grew. Not loudly, but consistently. Like a background noise I couldn't turn off. I started noticing things, how drained I felt, and wonder if they felt the same way. But no one talked about it. Everyone seemed focused, driven, certain, and I started to question myself again. Maybe I was the problem. Maybe I wasn't grateful enough. Maybe I expected too much, so I stayed quiet, kept going, kept performing. But inside, I was getting more and more lost. And the hardest part, I didn't know where to go, because I had spent my entire life moving towards something. But I never learned how to stop. I never learned how to ask, what do I actually want? And that question, it scared me, because I didn't have an answer. And without that answer, everything felt unstable. I remember one night in particular. I came home late, sat down in my apartment, still dressed in work clothes, too tired to even change. And I just sat there, looking around at everything. Ik had worked again. Dat in his badsystemen. It was louder, more real, more honest, and the thought came back. Is this really what I wanted? And for the first time, didn't push it away. I let it stay at this it and it hurt. Not in a dramatic way, but in a deep, quiet way. Because I realized something I had been avoiding for a long time. I had built a life based on expectations. Not alignment, not purpose, not even passion, just expectation. And now that I was here, I didn't recognize myself in it. That realization changed everything. Not immediately, but deeply. Because once you see it, you can't go back to pretending. You can't ignore it the same way. And I knew something had to change, but I didn't know how. Because walking away from something you worked your entire life for is not easy. It's not just a decision. It's an identity shift. Risked a question with no clear answer. And I wasn't ready for that, not yet, so I stayed, but differently, more aware, more honest with myself. And that's when things started to unravel. Not externally, internally. Because awareness doesn't fix things, it exposes them. And once everything was exposed, I couldn't ignore it anymore. The lack of fulfillment, the disconnection, the quiet feeling that I was living someone else's version of success. And that's when the real question finally came. Not what should I do, but wie am I? Without all of this, and that question, that's where everything began. That question didn't leave me alone. Who am I? Without all of this? It followed me everywhere, into meetings, into cat, mornings, even those late nights. When everything slows down and you can't distract yourself anymore at first. I tried to ignore it, just like I had ignored everything else. I told myself I was overthinking, that this was fair, that everyone's time's bad deep down. I knew it was more than that. Because this wasn't just a feeling, it was a realization, and realizations don't disappear just because you're uncomfortable with them. They stay, they wait, until you're ready to face them, or until you have no choice. For me, it became the second one, because the more aware I became, the harder it was to keep living the same way. Everything started to feel heavier, not the work itself, but the meaning behind it, or the lack of it. I would sit in meetings and hear conversations that once felt important, and now they felt empty. I would complete tasks that once gave me a sense of progress, and now they felt mechanical, like I was moving, but not going anywhere. And the hardest part, no one around me seemed to feel the same. Or at least, no one said it. Everyone was focused, ambitious, moving forward with confidence. And there I was, sitting in the same room, feeling completely disconnected. It's a strange feeling to be surrounded by people and still feel alone, not physically, but internally, because you're experiencing something no one else seems to acknowledge, and that isolation. It makes everything feel even more confusing. I started questioning everything, not just my job, but my choices, my priorities, the path I had been following for years. Was any of it actually mine, or was I just continuing something that was never fully mine to begin with? That question stayed with me for days, weeks, and instead of giving me clarity, it made everything feel uncertain. Because once you start questioning your foundation, everything on top of it feels unstable. And I didn't like that. I didn't like not knowing. I didn't like feeling lost after finally reaching a place that was supposed to give me direction. It didn't make sense. Success was supposed to feel like something, like relief, like pride, like satisfaction. But instead, it felt like confusion, and that contradiction. That's what broke something in me. because I realized something no one had ever told. Emmy, success doesn't guarantee fulfillment, and chasing the wrong version of success can take you further away from yourself. That truth was hard to accept, because it meant all the effort, all the sacrifice, all the years I spent pushing towards something might not have been leading me where I actually needed to go, and that thought, it was overwhelming, so I did what I always did. I tried to fix it, not by changing direction, but by pushing harder. I told myself maybe I just needed to give it more time. Maybe I hadn't adjusted yet. Maybe I needed to prove myself more, climb higher, achieve more, because maybe then it would feel right, so I threw myself deeper into it. More hours, more effort, more focus. I became even more disciplined, more committed, and from the outside, it probably looked like I was thriving, but inside, I was slowly burning out, because no matter how much I gave, the feeling didn't change. If anything, it got worse, because now I wasn't just disconnected. I was exhausted, and exhaustion has a way of removing your filters, of forcing honesty, because when you race at tired, you don't have the energy to pretend anymore. And one night, honesty hit me hard. I had just finished a long day. Came home, dropped my bag, and sat on the floor, not even on the couch, just on the floor. And I stayed there, in silence, no phone, no distractions, just me. And everything I had been avoiding. And the truth came out clear, unfiltered, painful, double quotes, I don't want this life. The moment I said that out loud, everything changed, because that was the first time. I submitted IT.note in my hepasitan, something like that. You can't take it back. You can't pretend you didn't feel it. And I just sat there, letting it sink in, letting myself feel it without immediately trying to fix it, without judging it, without pushing it away. And what I felt next, surprised. Relief. Not fear, not panic. Relief. Like something heavy had finally been acknowledged, like I had stopped lying to myself. And that moment, that quiet, honest moment, was the beginning of everything, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't following expectations. I wasn't chasing approval. I wasn't trying to fit into a version of success someone else had defined. I was just listening to myself, and that felt unfamiliar, but also real, of course. That didn't mean I had everything figured out, not even close. If anything, I felt more lost than ever, because now I had the truth, but no clear direction. I knew what I didn't want, but I didn't know what I did want, and that space in between. That's one of the hardest places to be, because it's uncertain, uncomfortable, and there's no clear path forward. But something inside me had shifted, because even though I didn't have answers, I wasn't willing to go back to pretending. I couldn't, not after that moment, so instead of rushing to make a big decision, I did something slowed down non-externally. Still showed up to work, still did what I needed to do, but internally, I created space. Space to think, space to feel, space to explore something I had never really explored before. Myself, I started asking small questions, not overwhelming ones, just simple ones. What do I enjoy? What gives me energy? Instead of draining it, when do I feel most like myself? And at first, the answers were unclear, because I had spent so long ignoring those questions that I didn't know how to answer them, but I stayed with it. Patient, curious, open, and slowly, things started to come up. Small things I had pushed aside, interests I had ignored. Parts of myself I hadn't paid attention to in years, and those small discoveries, they mattered more than I expected, because they weren't based on expectations. They were real. Personal. Mine, and that was new for me. But the real shift came when I realized something deeper. I didn't need to have everything figured out right now. I didn't need a perfect plan. I didn't need to immediately leave everything behind and start over. I just needed to start moving in a direction that felt more aligned, even if it was small, even if it didn't make sense to anyone else, even if it wasn't clear yet. And that realization, that took the pressure off, because I wasn't trying to solve my entire life anymore. I was just taking the next honest step. And sometimes that's enough to change everything. The strange thing about choosing honesty is that it simplifies things. Not externally, life doesn't suddenly become easy. Decisions don't magically make themselves. Uncertainty doesn't disappear, but internally, something changes. You stop fighting yourself, and I didn't realize how exhausting that fight had been until it stopped. For so long, I had been living in contradiction, moving in one direction, while feeling pulled in another, doing what made sense on paper, while ignoring what felt real inside. And that kind of tension, it drains you slowly, quietly, until one day you don't recognize yourself anymore. But now, that tension was starting to fade, not completely, but enough to feel the difference, enough to notice the space it left behind, and in that space, something new started to grow. Clarity, not about everything, but about what mattered. I stopped asking big, overwhelming questions. What is my purpose? What should I do with my life? Those questions felt too heavy, too abstract. Instead, I focused on something simpler. What feels right now? And that question changed how I moved, because it brought me back to the present, back to what I could actually feel, not what I thought I should feel, not what others expected, but what was real for me. And at first, those answers were small, almost insignificant, like choosing how I spent my free time, choosing what I said yes to, choosing what I said no to. But those small choices, they started to build something, a sense of direction, not a clear path, but a feeling, and that feeling became my guide. I started paying attention to when I felt energized, when I felt engaged, when I felt like time moved differently, and I noticed patterns, moments where I wasn't thinking about outcomes, moments where I wasn't trying to prove anything, moments where I was just present. Those moments became important to me because they felt real, more real than anything I had been chasing before. And slowly started creating more of them, not by making drastic changes, but by being intentional. Choosing alignment over it, even small ones, and over time, those small shifts started to change bigger things. The way I approached my work, the way I interacted with people, the way I thought about success, because my definition of success, it was changing. It was no longer about titles or income or how things looked from the outside. It was about something else, something deeper, how I felt in my own life. And that realization, that was freeing, because for the first time, success wasn't something I had to chase, it was something I could experience in moments, in choices, in alignment. And that didn't mean I suddenly quit everything or made a dramatic life change. That's not how it happened. It was slower than that, more intentional. I started exploring new paths, quietly learning, trying things without pressure, without needing immediate results, just allowing myself to discover. And that process, it brought something back into my life that I hadn't felt in a long time. Curiosity, not driven by expectations, but by genuine interest. And that changed everything. Because when you're curious, you're open, you're not stuck in one version of yourself, you're not afraid to evolve. And that's what I started doing. Evolving, not into something completely new, but back into something more real, more aligned. More. Of course, There were still challenges, moments of doubt, moments where I questioned everything again, where I wondered if I was making a mistake, if I was risking too much, if I should just go back to the path that made sense. But every time that thought came up, I remembered how that path felt. I remembered the emptiness, the disconnection, the quiet feeling of being lost. Even while everything looked right, and I knew I couldn't go back to that, not anymore, because now I had experienced something different, something real, and that mattered more than certainty, more than approval, more than anything I had been chasing before. Looking back now, I understand something I didn't before. Success isn't wrong, it's not the problem. The problem is chasing a version of success that doesn't belong to you. The problem is building a life based on expectations instead of alignment. The problem is ignoring yourself for so long that you forget how to listen. That's what happened to me. I didn't fail. I followed a path. I just followed the wrong one for me, and that's okay, because sometimes you need to reach a place to realize it's not where you're meant to stay. Sometimes feeling lost is what leads you back to yourself. And that's what this journey gave me. Not a perfect plan, not a guaranteed future, but something more valuable: awareness, honesty, and the ability to choose differently. If I could go back and talk to the version of me who believed success would solve everything, I wouldn't tell her she was wrong, because she was doing what she thought was right, what she was taught, what made sense at the time. But I would tell her this: don't lose yourself trying to build a life that looks right. Make sure it feels right too, because at the end of the day, you are the one who has to live it, not the people who applaud it, not the ones who admire it from a distance. And if you feel lost right now, even if everything in your life looks like it should make you happy, I want you to know this: you're not broken, you're not ungrateful, you're not doing something wrong, you're just being honest, and that honesty, that's where everything begins. You don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to figure everything out at once. You just need to start listening to yourself, to what feels real, to what feels aligned, and take one step, just one, in that direction. Because sometimes that's all it takes to find your way back, not to a perfect life, but to a real one. And that's what actually feels like success.